A lot of people ask me, now that you're the fail coach, do you not fail anymore? Do you help your clients not to fail? And I said, that would be terrible. If I don't fail for a few days, I'm worried, because that means that I'm slacking off.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Miha Matlievski, the fail coach. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life, to wake up energized, excited about the day, to have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want, to be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote comes from Seth Godin. How do I get rid of the fear? Alas, this is the wrong question. The only way to get rid of fear is to stop doing things that might not work, to stop putting yourself out there, to stop doing work that matters. No, the right question is, how do I dance with the fear? Fear is not the enemy. Paralysis is the enemy. We're going to talk about this today, and we're going to cover it. We're going to look at fear and failure and how to overcome them. And as always, better questions and understanding fear and failure can help us to handle these emotions better. Last week's action step was to find the right financial channel for you. This advice applies to everything. You have to find the right diet, the right coach, the right exercise plan, the one you will actually listen to and follow through with. Unfortunately, as we've talked about many times in the past, in the financial space, people we think are experts are not, and their advice might not be right for you. I'm constantly shocked at how many poor people there are giving financial advice, and how many of them are rich because they overcharge their customers for bad advice. So make sure you do your due diligence. It seems we're in a new normal, and we're going to have to deal with uncertainty going forward. How your life is affected seems to be very localized as areas open and close, and the rules seem to be random. Unfortunately, we have no leadership in this country, and handling the situation has come down to politics. I truly believe that come November 5th, we will see a dramatic drop in the stupidity of our leaders as the elections will be over. As for me, I take precautions. I stay away from unsafe activities. Have you created any plans to deal with your specific situation? Stocking up, not hoarding. Having the ability to work through short-term shutdowns and ensuring you have a financial plan is a good idea. The government is printing money, and there will be long-term consequences that include higher taxes and unstable markets. We need to be prepared. I expect this to be an ongoing issue for at least the next 12 months. And if it isn't, then we get to celebrate. Most of my events for this fall have been canceled. And at this point, I'm probably not even scheduling anything for the first half of next year because of all the fees involved and having to deal with the cancellations. Question for you. Who do you know who can benefit from listening to this podcast? I would appreciate if you would share it with them, and I'm sure they will thank you as well. So today we're going to cover fear and uncertainty and economic struggles. Our guest today is Miha. In 2009, he had 4 companies go bankrupt overnight, landing him $5 million in debt. Contemplating suicide to escape the pain as he looked over the balcony, he had a life-saving aha moment. He realized that failure was a normal part of life. When he admitted to himself that he failed and recognized he needed to stop blaming others and blaming circumstances, that was the turning point. It was then that he made a choice to learn from his failures. Once he changed his focus, he realized he could do things differently in the future to help others. Since then, he is fully recovered and was able to create a business that he scaled to 8 figures in less than a year. His life's mission is to help people develop a healthy relationship with failure, especially entrepreneurs. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to Richer Soul, Miha, the Fail Coach. It's great to have you join us today.
Well, hello. It's a huge pleasure to be your guest, Rocky, and an honor to be here and share what we're going to share with your audience.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Oh, boy. Literally nothing. So that was my huge problem later on in my life, because I was a very spoiled child. It wasn't that my parents were like super, super rich, but we were living in the communist Yugoslavia, where nobody had much, but most families had 2 or 3 children, and I was the only child. We also lived together with my grandparents. So, 4 people making a living and giving me everything I wanted. I never had to try to do anything for anything. Nobody ever held me accountable. So someday I plan to write a book, and I know that the first chapter will be my not so perfect childhood, because I was so unprepared for the life out there. I had no understanding of how to manage finances, appreciating the value of money and so on. So that was my huge problem, and that really led to that huge downfall in 2009.
And I don't think parents always understand this, right? They did this out of love for you. They weren't trying to spoil you. But when we don't have our kids be accountable, and when we don't make them go through some struggles, then we don't end up with strong adults. We end up with problems further down the road. And I don't think people realize that as much.
Yeah, I mean, I know both my mom and my dad, they were trying to give me what they never had. My grandparents, they both went through the World War II. They had nothing and so on, So everybody was just, we had nothing, so let's Miha have everything. But one thing that, I usually tell to my friends, but I also to fellow CEOs, if your kids or if your employees have nothing bad to say about you and they absolutely love you, then you suck at your job.
And why do you say that?
Because, sometimes you need to give it a little bit of hard love. You can't, no entrepreneurial journey is without roadblocks and tries and fails and so on. But also, in the business, it can never everything be okay. It's impossible to find, especially when you have 20, 30, 40 employees, to find the most perfect employees that will never, do anything wrong, that will never overlook anything, that will always push themselves 10% above the limits and so on. I mean, that's not the reality. That might be imagination. So, a big portion of being a leader, and as a parent or as the CEO, you are the leader. You need to show empathy when it's needed, but you also need to, sometimes use the stick a little bit, So if everybody in the company, when I interview them, tell me that they absolutely love their CEO, I know there's something very wrong in the company.
That's an interesting take. So let's kind of take a step back. You had this wonderful, perfect childhood.
Yes.
And you became an adult. What happened at that point?
Well, the first shocker was so my father had a small family business. And I would say that was the biggest income generator in our family. And so after I dropped out of high school, just because, why would I learn about history? And like I said, I had no accountability at home. I could literally do whatever I wanted, and I was still the perfect child. And so he said, well, if you don't want to go to school, you can come work for my company. And as I did that, because, I saw him taking all these trips abroad, flying the plane, good lunches and dinners with business partners. And I was like, you know what? Entrepreneurship is the best thing ever. Of course, I want to be working for you. Then I'll go to do those trips. So that was my thinking back then. And because my father loved me as much as he did and made my life easy in the company as well, he never pushed me. I never had to learn anything. It was basically, here's your desk, try to do something, whatever you want. And I was more or less son by occupation. I did enjoy meeting people. I did enjoy networking. I did eventually start loving the sales part. So that was something I just loved doing and I was good at. But then very suddenly, my father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer one day, and 3 weeks later, he was dead. And I woke up into this whole new reality.
And that's got to be a very hard change to go through.
Yeah. I was 23, so imagine 23 years, you live in a bubble, and then one morning you wake up and the bubble's not there anymore, and the reality of what the real world looks like is suddenly, I was learning things like, how do you wake up to an alarm clock? And I still don't do that well, but thankfully now at least I've created a life where I can just wake up when my dogs start jumping on me.
So what did you do? You're 23, you've got this, I'm assuming you have the company now, and you still don't know how to run it. So what happened?
Yeah, I thought I knew, I've been in the company for a few years. It's not that hard, And everybody, I guess, assumed, like my mom, I guess she assumed I must have learned something along that journey. But the reality was that I had no clue. I had no understanding of cash flow and finances and all of that. Paired with, I had no clue, how do you lead people, how do you manage employees. In reality, the best thing for me back then would be to just hire a CEO and just keep on doing what I was good at, the sales part. But that thought never crossed my mind. It was, to me, it was just logical. Okay, so my father died, now I take over. That's how you do it. If I would at least realize that I have a lot to learn and start learning, that would be one thing. But because of all that childhood, I thought, I'm just that perfect child. Of course I can do this. So I started failing very quickly. And in a few months, that company was on the brinks of bankruptcy. Now, you know how sometimes you get lucky. And I luckily met two people, and they saw something in me, in my sales skills. And they said, well, we'll pump some money in, save the company, we'll buy the majority share from you, and then you do your stuff. Here's the key to the car, a credit card, and a mobile phone. That's all you need, and a laptop. You don't need much more than that. Now you go around, you make these sales, and we'll take care of the company. And they did. And the company started doing amazing month after month. We were doing like 100 to 150% more in sales each month because I was really, really good. There was no burden, financial burden on me. Will the card work? Will I have gas money and things like that? And then Miha became creative again because that's who I am. And I started seeing other problems and I started creating new companies because my thinking was, well, those guys, they have majority share. Why would I bring new businesses to that table if I can handle that by myself? Look at me. I'm so amazing at sales. I still didn't get it that there's much more to running a company than just doing sales and marketing. Unfortunately, we were in the middle of the economic boom. 2005, 6, 7, 8. In Europe at that time, everything was booming. You were walking down the street with an idea and banks would be throwing money at you. It was so easy to secure loans for real estate projects that were 100% loans. So you didn't need to invest even a penny of your own money. And so Miha started creating companies. And in those amazingly good times, it was very easy to get by if you were good at sales and marketing. Now, the problem came when in 2009, the financial crisis came from US to Europe, and my companies were basically like that first house from the Three Little Pigs story, made out of straws, no foundations. No solid foundations. And so when that wind blew into my houses, it was a domino effect. One of them, as I mentioned, was in real estate. I was an investor in a huge real estate project without much knowledge of real estate at all. And the bank said, prices dropped so significantly. This will be a huge loss at the end. And I was in the middle of the building process. And they backed out. All my other companies were co-signing for that loan. I was co-signing for that loan and a whole lot of other things. The bank, because in Europe, they don't have to go to court. They can you pre-approve your other banks that if this bank comes to them, they can just take the money away from your bank account. It's a very familiar financial instrument in Europe when you're taking big loans like that. I haven't yet heard of a similar thing in the US or in Canada. So I'm not sure if something like that even exists. So I had no asset protection in place and all of that. And so in one single day, that was Monday, December 7, 2009, in the morning, I got a call from the bank. Next day, everything was empty. My businesses were bankrupted, and I ended up owing $5 million personally. I lost everything, all my businesses, all my net worth, all my private, everything.
That's got to be tough to handle. So what did you do at that point?
Well, at first, I didn't even realize what happened to me, to be honest. I was like, okay, I can solve this. I was still that cocky, overconfident, I'm the best thing that ever happened to this world type of guy. And I was like, I can handle this. And actually, I think I made like a list of, I can try, to secure this agreement or that, or I'll go to a different bank. And, I had a whole bunch of ideas. But, the reality of the crisis started creeping into the whole economy, and I wasn't able to do any of that. And so a few weeks later, I was at the end of the list, and that's when it really dawned on me. And the phone calls from, my ex-employees, my suppliers, other banks, like it felt like I owe money to half of the country. they started calling, and those calls weren't nice calls. It's not, oh, we're going to sue you. It was, we'll do strange things to you type of calls, because everybody was desperate. I mean, now looking back, of course, nobody wanted to kill me. Let's be honest. All they wanted was their money, and they were trying to, kind of corner me. I don't know. Maybe they thought I have some secret bank account in Switzerland or something, and if they pressure me enough, I'll just hand them the money. But all of that together, that's when really the depression started, the anxiety, the 24/7 stress, the darkness creeping into me, losing any idea of any light on the other side of what tunnel. I had this feeling that if I see the light, it must be train heading into me, and not a ray of light on the other side. Week after week after week, it was harder. I got divorced. Most of my friends would never stopped answering my calls. Nobody. I was feeling that, oh, everybody should help me right now, or at least, some people should. And of course, nobody wanted to help me. And I felt all alone, all lost, with all this big burden. You start feeling like you are a complete failure. Not you failed, but you're a failure. This is it for the rest of my life. I used the good portion of my life, and now this is it for the rest. And then you start asking yourself, like, what's the point of, living and going on, the usual. And then you start Googling how to commit a suicide. And then one day I got the notice that my apartment will be taken by the bank as well. And I was sitting on the balcony. It was in the evening. I still remember I was smoking a cigarette, and I just climbed over the fence, and I was holding myself with my left hand. I was already inclined over the edge, looking down, and all I needed was just let go the left hand. That was it. But at that moment, looking down, because I was on the 5th floor, if you're on the 20th floor, you jump, you die. It's a no-brainer. On the 5th floor, things can happen. And I was thinking, am I going to do this right? Or am I going to just end up on a wheelchair? Because that wouldn't solve anything, But my wish, why I wanted to commit the suicide, was mainly because of that overwhelm in my head. I had not a single second of peace in my head for a few months. And all I wanted was some peace and quiet. That's why the whole suicide idea was so inviting. Because, you jump, and then it's silent. And so as I was looking down, asking myself if I'm going to do that right, it was almost like this Miha split into two Mihas, and one started yelling at the other. Now, I did that out loud, so the neighbors heard me, and I used very juicy language, so I'm not going to repeat that here. But it was along the lines, you made that mistake. Why did you go into that project? Why did you work with that person? Why didn't you go to the lawyer? The funny thing, you. And this is the key moment where all of that childhood comes together, because I was always told by my parents and grandparents how amazing I am, and all of that, and no accountability and things like that. Whenever something good happened to me, it was just normal. I never appreciated it because, that's normal that good things happen to me. But whenever something bad happened to me, I always found somebody else to blame it on, or something else, because, it can't possibly be me because I'm this crazy good person. And so in the crisis, it was very easy to find blame, the government, the financial crisis, the banks. It was so easy to find blame outside of you. And this was the first time ever in my life when I took ownership of my own mistakes. The first time ever. But the funny thing that happened a second later, that's the aha moment, was if I was able to make all those mistakes and still create all that wealth and everything, I can do it again, and I can do it better if I change what I do. And that was when that little ray of light started shining again. It wasn't big. I climbed back in, but it was enough for me to keep fighting. And then, of course, I want to point here, because a lot of people think, oh, you had the aha moment and now everything was smooth right. No, it was 3.5 years of pure hell. Every single day, fight between old Miha, old habits, new Miha, new habits, all the inner demons that popped up, all the refiguring who I really am, what do I really stand for. It was one hell of a fight. I probably wanted to give up like 5 times every single day. But little by little, as I was working on my personal development and then on my business development as well, I became stronger in that fight, and those demons became weaker and weaker and weaker.
Possibility is an amazing thing, because when we see possibility, the whole world opens up and opportunities can happen. But as you said, it doesn't mean that it's going to be a straight line to success. And I think too often people don't realize how much work, how much struggle goes into creating that success. And we all have these inner demons, right? We all fight within ourselves. We're our own worst critic. And it's learning to overcome that. You said you did a lot of personal development. What was probably the one major thing that you were doing that helped you bring about this transformation?
I can't say that there is like a one thing. I think it's a multitude of little things that came together, like learning and practicing mindfulness so that I was able to switch off the autopilot, to step away from the current moment. But that doesn't help by itself. I had to learn and practice emotional intelligence, because you know what? Most of the time, we human beings, we try to be emotional when logic is needed, and we try to be logical when emotions would be better. So emotional intelligence, knowing thyself, and then managing yourself, and then being socially aware, and then managing others was a big thing. Breathing exercises. One of the things that really, I think he was like the angel on that journey was when I adopted. In 2013, I adopted a stray dog from a shelter. And through him, I had to be more social. I had to go more out. And it was because of him that I started taking better care of myself, because I had no love for myself. I was just focused on, I need to get out of that debt. And I was burning myself out on all levels. And he really balanced me, because I had to be more balanced because of him. That's why I do all the work with animals today, because I just want to give back to them, because I'm not sure if I would make it without him. So if you want to hear me say what was the number one thing, I think it was actually happy, adopting happy.
We all need a support system. And in this case, even a dog, like it's something to get up and know that you have to do. You know, they're dependent on you. And in a strange way, it kind of works. And when we have that need to do things, it makes us take those little steps. And it's those little steps you took that bring about the change. So you talked about balance of logic and emotion. Can we dig into that? What do you mean by that?
Well, when, like, not just if you're an entrepreneur, but every single person, we wear multiple hats. We do multiple things, and those things that we do require sometimes emotions and sometimes logic. I don't know, when you are employing people, you should be fairly logical that you do the due diligence. But then, when you have employees and maybe, next month you can't give the paycheck or not full paycheck and you want to bring them together, you have to use the emotions to inspire them so that you all pull through that month and then come better out in the next month. So there's always this, nobody can just be logical, nobody can just be emotional all the time. Different roles that we play in our lives take different approach. And often we use the wrong one. Often I see entrepreneurs trying to start their business with logic. Oh, what makes the most sense right now? Even if I'm completely disconnected from that business and I have no wish to talk to people who would buy that service. It doesn't go that way. What you do should come from your heart. You should be passionate about it. I mean, there will be plenty of obstacles down the road. And if you are not passionate about it, well, you'll give up very quickly. Balancing when to use what, the left, the right, the heart, the logic, is very important. And first, you need to do that self-assessment, know thyself, really rediscover how you do things, learn from the past how you did things in the past, what were the results, and maybe try something different if those results were not the way they were supposed to be. Another thing is failure. Failure is a huge part of our life. Every time we do something new, it's much more likely that we will fail than not. What's healthy relationship with failure? A logical one. Why do we fail? We fail because we don't use smart goal setting. If I say, I want to lose 100 pounds in a month, well, that ain't going to happen. And if it does, I'm probably going to die in the process. So, when we set goals, we need to set smart goals. I'm very big fan of that technique, smart goal setting technique. And then if the goal was smart, but we still didn't achieve it, it's not because God doesn't want us to achieve that or I don't know what outside forces. It's either I was doing the wrong steps or I had bottlenecks in the process and I didn't saw them and eliminate them. It's that simple. But that is if you look at it logically. But the reaction of most people is emotional. And when you include emotions, you cloud your vision. And then you have a whole bunch of things going through your head in that self-talk. And none of that has anything to do with reality.
It doesn't. And your conversation reminds me of something because I've talked about it in the past and we haven't visited it recently. To do things right in life, right, there's a recipe for success. It's just like baking a cake. You can have all the right ingredients, but if you don't put them together in the right order, in the right way, at the right time, you don't end up with a cake. You end up with a disaster. So you can have everything correct and you can have all your resources, but you need to follow the right patterns. And then part of life is learning that recipe for how you want to live. And that requires that you try a lot of things and you see what works and what doesn't for you, because it has to fit you. It comes back to the passion, and see how it all comes together. And then you constantly adjust. It's not like you just do this and you're done in life. You're constantly pulling levers and changing things and pivoting. And then sometimes we have a crisis, right? 2009 was a crisis outside of us. Today, we have another crisis in the world called COVID. It causes us to have to learn to pivot and change and take action. And if we don't, we get wiped out because the world changes. So you have to keep up with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that you mentioned cooking, even if you have a recipe. Like, I can give you an example. So I'm from Slovenia. Slovenia is a neighboring country to Italy. Italy is the biggest producer of just the right rice to make the perfect risotto. If you buy that rice, it's much easier to make. And then, I go to Serbia, where you can't buy that because, it's seen as a third world country. And even though the packaging is the same, the rice inside is not the same. And, because I was a single a gentleman, you meet a lady, you want to impress her, and since I'm very good at cooking, I invite her to test my famous risotto, which I actually learned from Gordon Ramsay. That risotto, not good. It wasn't creamy. It was because just the rice didn't have the starch in it. And so all those textures and flavors weren't able to come together. So even if you have a recipe, that's why what I wanted to say here was a lot of people out there, a lot of these coaches and so on, they're offering blueprints, exact blueprint. There is no exact blueprint. What we have is the framework, what you were just saying, like those main steps. The building blocks of how you build a business, but that in between is the little tweaking and understanding your current situation, your resources, and so on. Because you and I, we can start the same business, and maybe Kim Kardashian, and she tweets you out or Instagrams you out, and bam, tomorrow you're a millionaire. And I don't know her. I'm doing the same thing as you. Just don't have the support of that one person to Instagram me out, and I'm not going to make 5 figures.
And that's true. People don't realize how much effort and work goes into that. And there's a reason that Kim is supporting you is because you probably spent 10 years building a relationship and creating that type of an environment where she wants to support you back. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that nobody talks about. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. Let's talk about failure, because you are the fail coach. How do we change our attitudes towards failure? Because what you're telling me is failure is good, but nobody says that.
Well, I mean, a lot of people ask me, now that you're the fail coach, do you not fail anymore? Do you help your clients not to fail? And I said, that would be terrible. If I don't fail for a few days, I'm worried, because that means that I'm slacking off. I mean, let's understand failure, like what failure really is. So you are doing things that and you're comfortable doing, so that's your comfort zone. But then we entrepreneurs, we have our crazy dreams and goals, and we want to, put people on Mars or impact, or I don't know. Usually we have quite crazy big dreams. Now, if you want to achieve those crazy big dreams, and not just entrepreneurs, even in the gym or anywhere, but anytime you want to push yourself to the next level, and depending how far away that level is, the more you will have to be outside of your comfort zone. Now, the definition of outside of the comfort zone is things that I'm doing for the first, second time. Once I do something 20 times, well, that becomes new comfort zone, doesn't it? So when we're doing things for the first time, the likelihood of not succeeding is bigger than the likelihood of succeeding. That's just math. It's not 50-50. So we know that we will fail. And it's how we look at that failure And of course, not just how we look at that. So one thing is the mindset thing, but also what kind of foundations we have in place. So when we do fail, that we have a system in place where we can measure our activities and quickly spot the failures so we can react quicker before it becomes a huge problem. So that's one thing that eliminates a lot of the emotions if you spot it quicker and if you're able to react quicker. So having strong foundations is very important. And then it really boils down to mindfulness and emotional intelligence, because mindfulness will help you. So when you realize, oh, I failed. Now, mindfulness will help you to breathe it out, to step one step away and not be on autopilot when that happens. And then you can check in with the emotional intelligence and say, okay, this too shall pass, okay, what can I learn from this? Why did this happen? What was the process leading? So you can react with logic, with good questions. And basically what you do is you dissect and reverse engineer the process leading to failure. And that will give you loads of answers. Now, if you can't get them, find somebody who can help you. Maybe, a mentor, a coach, a brainstorming opportunity, whatever. A Facebook group full of other fellow entrepreneurs where you can share what happened to you, and maybe somebody else went through that. Maybe they know what to do to fix it. But it's staying in a non-emotional state and being in the driver's seat. That's really what's important when failure does happen. But, one thing that you can also do, this is something when I was still working a lot with startups, we were brainstorming of possible future failures and already preparing plans. If you have a plan, when something happens, you can go directly to plan. You skip the emotional phase. Oh, this happened. Wait a minute. I have a plan. Okay, what does the plan say? What do I need to do? What do I need to execute?
And that's very true. Understanding risks is a important step. And that's what you're talking about. Failures are basically, what are the risks in the business? And having risk mitigation plans is extremely important. And that's basically what you're talking about. I think a lot of times people just have a very optimistic viewpoint and they don't realize all of the risks that are there until they go through them. And so actually taking the time to say, what if, and not spending your whole day on this in the sense of every day all looking at negativity, but at least being aware, hey, there are potential risks. How can I mitigate the risks now? Or what type of plan do I want to institute when that occurs? And so that's very, very important.
Yeah, another big problem, if you allow me, just very quickly, often we fail at things that we don't know what we don't know. So, let's say, let's say you are a 7-figure entrepreneur. You are making $2-3 million per year. And now you wake up and you say, you know what? I want to scale this company. I want to go to 20 million in 2 years, which is doable, completely doable. Why not? But you don't know what you don't know. And then, if you're going to try to brainstorm through that yourself without ever being there before, it will be much harder and it will involve way more failures on that journey. And then, it's almost impossible to get there in such a short time. But I don't know why, but I see such resistance from entrepreneurs, not from athletes. Athletes understand why you need to have, coaches and trainers and this and that. But from entrepreneurs, they all, not all, but a lot of them, a big majority of them, they want to figure out everything by themselves. I mean, just go and surround yourself, find a mastermind of, 5 other entrepreneurs who are already at 20-30 million mark, and hope that they will include you in that mastermind because they want to surround themselves with people who will push them forward as well. So you might have a bit hard time, but to get in that. But, find a mentor. I mean, it's not that hard to approach people. and ask them for some advice, some mentorship. Go to meetings, go to networking events, things like that. You have to be proactive in learning what you don't know. Otherwise, it will be, failure after failure after failure.
And that's very true. I'm in 3 different mastermind groups currently. Each has a different purpose and helps me in a different part of my life and in a different part of my business. And so every week to 2 weeks, I'm learning and improving, and they're helping me go further faster. I've had coaches in the past who've helped me one-on-one. So it's the accountability. That's, I think, the biggest thing. You hear all these people want to do stuff, but they don't have the willpower to show up every day. And I think that's part of what a coach does, right? A coach says especially in sports, we're having practice 5 days a week, be here at 6 a.m., and we're going to practice, and we're going to do these drills, and we're going to lift these weights, and here's your diet program. And all of those people, it's not one coach doing all of that. You've got a trainer for the weightlifting. You've got a dietitian for the diet. You've got somebody overlooking the entire program, and that's how they get to that high level.
Yes.
And that's why, go ahead.
Just a few months ago, I was doing another podcast interview, and the host said what was a big game changer for him was because he is a huge fan of tennis, and he was watching the finals of Wimbledon, men finals. He said there are 2 of the best tennis players in the world, and every few seconds they check what the coach is mimicking and trying to tell them. He said you have like 2 of the best in the world, and they still have coaches, and that's what inspired him to get a coach. But one thing that I see among business coaches now, I do consider myself that I am a damn good business coach. And I mean, I probably wouldn't be hired to do leadership development trainings for Fortune 500 companies if I wouldn't be. I have coaches. I have mentors. I have masterminds that I'm a part of, because I understand that I can't see clearly sometimes when I'm looking at my own company because I'm too involved. And sometimes I need that push. Sometimes I need for somebody to challenge me. Sometimes I need somebody to kick me in the ass and say, Miha, you're doing exactly what your team not to do. Because, it happens. So, often when I'm speaking with other business coaches and they say, well, why would I need a coach? I'm a business coach. Well, I honestly would just run away from those.
And that's very true. I have people who are coaching me now and helping me and motivating me and pushing me out of my comfort zone to do all those things. And I notice, because I also coach sports, and when I would coach sports, I'm standing on the sidelines. So I'm seeing the entire field. The players are on the field and they're only seeing their little bubble of the world. And so they can't see what's going on around them. And that's why you need somebody who's kind of outside of the trees and looking at the bigger forest to be able to say, you're missing all these things. Let's put systems and processes in place so that you can ensure that they happen. And when you talked about Fortune 500 companies, all those companies have people in each seat at the table, right? You've got a board of directors who are actually overlooking the company itself, right? So that's essentially their mastermind group, is this board of directors who's not even in the company. They're on top of the company, and they're managing the executive. And then the executive's got his team around them, experts in every different area. As a small business owner, we're trying to do it all ourselves. We're trying to be the macho man, and we can't be. We need to have people in all those different seats of life to make sure. And the cool thing with coaches is you may not need somebody to sit next to you 40 hours a week and do the work. You can get a coach to sit next to you an hour a week and help you just do what you need. And that's what the small business owners should focus on, probably.
Yes, absolutely.
So one of the things that you talk about, and I think you also alluded to it earlier, is the power of leverage. Can we dig into that? What do you mean by leverage? Well,
we all know what leverage means, but often people want to speed up the business development process. And there is a way. I mean, there are no shortcuts, but what we can do to speed it up is to use leverages. Money is a leverage as a resource because it enables you to outsource, delegate. OPM, other people's money. That's why startups go for funding. OPT, other people's time. That's why you employ people or you find freelancers. Your past experience, if you are, I don't know, you've been in a corporate job for 20 years, now you want to start being a coach, and you're coaching something that you've been doing for 20 years, of course, you are leveraging those 20 years in your messaging, in your sales process, and so on. So the only way for us to speed up the process, even that Kim Kardashian thing, that was a way of leverage. You leveraged somebody from your own network to tweet you out or send over an Instagram story. And that's how you leverage to speed up the sales process, because her audience trusts her. And because she trusts you and tweeted you out, you gain their trust and they're much more likely to buy. And if you ask me, the biggest leverage of them all, and in my view, and I would love to hear your opinion on it, is trust. The number one currency in the world. I think trust is even more important than gold or any other currency. And what we do in the business, most of the time, we are creating trust. So we take people on a journey of know, like, and trust. And then we try to maintain that trust once we have it. And then we, of course, want to leverage that trust, but in a way where we don't lose it, because once it's lost, it's so hard to get it back. And you spend so much time and resources to build it, you really don't want to lose it.
And that's very true. And that comes down to relationships and building good relationships where the people trust you. And I think that's it's a major important factor that we probably don't spend enough time on. Everyone all of a sudden is rushing at the last second, trying to sell things to people. But it's a lot easier to do it when you've had that long-standing relationship where they know you. And they've been doing that forever. I mean, you take Warren Buffett. If he lost all his money today, right, he could be back in business tomorrow because he has those relationships. He has the knowledge levers. He has all of those types of relationships to be able to rebuild immediately. And I don't think people spend enough time, because we're so busy in the business, we forget about everyone else, right? You can't build trust and relationships unless you help other people. And that becomes important because it's just like when you talked about when you had your failure, all your friends disappeared, right? And all those things disappeared. And that's unfortunate. But those are the times where we need those people. And you'd be surprised who comes out of the woodwork in those times as well.
Well, to be honest, I was living a very lavish lifestyle, and I was surrounding myself with what I thought were my best and truest friends. But it wasn't so. I was looking at that relationship. That was one of the aha moments later on, was how empty on the inside and on any deepness. Like even my relationship with my ex-wife. Our relationship was based on me working all week long. And then over the weekend, we would fly somewhere and we would go to fancy restaurants and to fancy shops and buy Armani and Gucci and whatnot. But you know what? When all of that was gone, we had nothing to talk about.
And that's a major struggle, right? Be careful what you wish for. People, because everyone goes after these fancy lifestyles. And I know I chased money for a good part of my life until I realized there is much more to life than just the money. We have to have that harmony of our health, of our money. And money is important because it allows you to do things those relationships, managing our time. We have precious time, and then how we fit into this universe and how we connect to the world. So all of these things have to come together, and you've got to figure it out for yourself, right? Because what works for me doesn't work for Miha, and it doesn't work for you, the listener, right? You've got to sit, try, test things out, fail, get back up, try again. That's literally how this happens. It's not an easy process. But if you're just sitting in your comfort zone, expecting everything to be okay, the world is going to turn around one day like it has now. And maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe you won't. But who wants to live life on a lottery, right? I don't want to wait for someone to pick me or me to get lucky. And even people who win in the lottery usually fail because, in a sense, like you won in the lottery, right? You got born to the right family with wealth, but even though you won the lottery, you didn't do the work at that point, so you didn't deserve the results. And until you did the work, that's when you deserve the results. And so people need to do that. Don't wait for life's lottery. Go out, try, fail, get up. Do it again. I mean, that's literally the reality of it.
Well, I would just add, reflect and learn from the failure. Because a lot of people, I see a lot of them who are resilient in a way where they fail and they try again and again and again, but they don't change what they're trying. So they keep failing, doing same thing over and over. So, you have to, when you fail, I always suggest do a bit of reflection. Take away the emotions, dissect and reverse engineer the process, and then try to find answers. What else you can try? Google, books, mentors, coaches, whatever. Just find somebody who can point you in a different direction if you are lost on the ideas what else you can try.
And that's very true. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, right? So yes. you have to do things differently. And as you talked about, at each point in the change, you need different people on your team. So the people who got me here are not the people who are going to get me there. And so you also have to be ready to make those types of pivots and change, constantly be looking at the people around you and changing them to get you to the level that you want to be. And as part of that, I think, is looking at the people to see how good they are at putting all these things together. Because you've talked about mindfulness, mindsets, emotional intelligence, balancing logic and emotion. All of those things, if you're dealing with someone who isn't doing that, then they're going to take you down a path you probably shouldn't go. It's too narrow and focused and can cause issues in the other parts of life. So you've got to be the one in charge, though, and be in control to maintain those levers. So you talk a lot about the power of presence. And I think a lot of people are more stuck in kind of routine. They're not really present in the day and what's going on. How have you been able to find presence in your life?
Two stupidly simple techniques. I teach them all the time to everybody. So number one, morning routine. And the goal of that morning routine is to put you in the driver's seat of and plan out how you want to spend the day, what you want to accomplish that day. So, too often, what happens to us is we wake up, we wake up 10 minutes late, and then we run through the house, and bam, we are on autopilot. And before we know it, the evening is here. We look back, we say, oh, we were super busy today. But what did I actually do? So morning routine will put you in control. And then the second thing that I did, and so many people that I've coached did it, just use the reminders app in your phone, on your Mac, or I don't know, whatever the equivalent of that is on Windows and Android. But on iPhones and Macs, we have a reminders app. Just go in there. And what I did, a reminder that says, be mindful. every half an hour throughout the day, from the moment when I usually wake up to when I usually go to sleep. And then you click on it and say repeat daily. Every day, every half an hour, a quick reset, just so that you can make a check-in. Magic that happens out of that is that after a few weeks, you are more and more mindful throughout the day by yourself, and then more and more and more. And then slowly, when you really can go throughout your whole day mindfully, in charge, in control, as a driver, you delete every second reminder so that they are only each hour, and then every 2 hours, and so on. But even after so many years, I've started with this in 2012, I think. I still have 4 reminders that say, be mindful, just in case. Just, sometimes you can wander off, and it's a good thing. I don't want to spend a whole week without the reset, or a whole month or a whole year before it dawns on me. There's little reminders, and I use them for so many other things. And they just reset you on a very often basis. And often that's all you need. You accept the past because you can't change it. You say, I wasn't really mindful for the past 30 minutes, but that's okay. I'll do my best to be a bit more mindful in the next 30 minutes. And little by little, that changes.
That it does. I've noticed even within myself that I've forgotten certain routines that I used to do. And I'm like, why did I stop doing that? That was working. It was important. And I have to go back to doing that. So having those reminders is very helpful.
Stupidly simple thing.
You know what? And honestly, in life is very simple, but it's hard to do the simple, right? We're all looking for these big plans and these big thises and that's. It's not. It's the simple little things and showing up and doing simple.
Yes.
And that's what
every
creates
single day.
Is there anything that we should have talked about that we didn't get to cover today?
I would just like to point out once again the importance of laying down foundations. Building a business is just like building a house. You don't just go and build a house and skip the foundations. You shouldn't in your business. The foundations are not there for the good times. For, 2018, 2019, everything was going up. Real estate, shares, people buying everything like crazy. That's not when you need foundations. But when things like COVID and the recession of 2008 and 9 and so on hit, that's when you need solid foundations. And even, for smaller things that happen on your journey. So never skip laying down the foundations. And the foundations always start with you, the entrepreneur. Nobody was ever born a perfect entrepreneur. We all have some skills, we lack some skills, we have some mindsets, we lack some mindsets, and so on. So do the due diligence, figure out what you need, and then work on that. The work always starts first and foremost with you, and then it goes outwards.
And so I was going to ask you, what's one action step people can take this week to maybe start doing that?
Well, maybe I would say this, I'm sure a lot of people right now want to speed up something. They might want to, need some oxygen money or something like that, or some other resources as they're growing and scaling their businesses. Like I said, the leverage of trust is the fastest way, because otherwise you have to take people through the know, like, and trust journey. So if you want to speed it up, go where trust already is. So one simple thing that everybody can do, go through your contacts in your phone, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on everywhere where you have contact, and just make a list of people where you feel you have a relationship already established. And then just start reaching out and having conversations and see what magic can happen out of that.
And that is a great first step. And actually, I did that a couple weeks ago. I actually went through my LinkedIn and in my contacts, and I started creating lists so that I could be more intentional in following up with people, because that's important. And it doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur or an employee. Even an employee should do this, because when you find yourself out of a job, if you have that list of people in your industry, it opens up doors for new opportunities. So these rules apply regardless of where you sit and what you're doing in life.
Absolutely. Just one example. I started coaching this one small company a few weeks ago. The first thing we did was, okay, let's find some low-hanging fruits. I made them do this exercise. In about 3 weeks' time, they secured and already signed and got payments for $65,000 of new orders. Everything came out of the existing network, leveraging trust.
Impressive. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Living in alignment with who I am.
And, I think for most people, they have to figure out who they are, because if you don't know who you are, you can't live in alignment with yourself. Yes,
we are surrounded with all this social influence from media, parents, friends, family, and so on. It can be very easy to lose yourself. Doing an in-depth research into who you truly are, what you believe in, what you want, what are your priorities, and so on. It's not an easy task to do. It's one of the hardest. But once you do it, you can actually start living in alignment. And that, for me, is a life of abundance and happiness when you live according to who you are.
And that's very true. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Well, I learned the power of embracing failure. So that's one thing for sure. Laying down foundations, being humble, things like that. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt me if I would learn them much earlier.
And that's true. And I, too, have learned many of those things. The person I am today is not the person I was at 23. It's been a long journey of learning.
Yes.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to fail.
And that's perfect. I mean, and I think at 18, we're very afraid of failure, right? We're constantly afraid of that. And that's the one skill we need to learn most.
I've traveled a lot in my life, and I've met a lot of young people who were traveling the world. The backpackers, they go on a 1-year travel. Those were usually, unless they were traveling with a lot of money, but the ones who really, took it a bit the harder way, working a little bit, having to, find their ways around and so on, those were the ones who were more well equipped for the real life out there. So the ones who dared to go and try and fail and learn. So when my kids will be 18, I'll probably just buy them a ticket to New Zealand, and then 1 year later, a return ticket from Colombia. And I don't care how you go from point A to point B. You go and figure it out.
And, there's a lot of wisdom in that. And I think when we take that year to find ourselves and really figure out who we are and to actually see the world, right? Because we live in this bubble. If you go from there to there, you get to see the entire world. And each of the places you go, there's some things they do well and some things they do poorly. And to have that much wisdom at such a young age to see what's truly important is inspiring.
Yes, absolutely.
If people would like to find you, learn more, and connect, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, the easiest one is to just go to Google and search for Fail Coach, and they'll find plenty of results and ways to connect with me. But if I may say, I've just recently created an ebook that takes people through those foundations. I call it the 5 pillars. They can go to leverageoftrust.com and get it there for free. It's a PDF book, so they can download it for free. And then they'll see in that book other ways that they can connect with me and explore what I have to give and what I'm sharing with others.
And I will make sure to put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us. It was an amazing conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Failure is not the end, and blaming others doesn't solve the problem. Fear is nothing but false evidence appearing real. Miha has a course that I put in the show notes on building trust with other people, which ties into this week's action step: creating a list of people you know and continuing to build trust with them. If you are comfortable building trust, then create the list and go execute. If you need to improve this skill, check out the course. I do get an affiliate fee, but the course is so expensive, it's pennies. Actually, inexpensive. I think it's like $17. Relationships are what open doors. They can get you jobs, support, and to the front of the line when others don't have access. You can't wait until you need something to ask. You have to build trust over time. And so plant the seeds now for what you will need in the future. I'm constantly working on this skill and upping my game. Does it mean I fail sometimes? Yes, it does. But we know that's okay. I learn and I pivot and I take the next step. We don't fail until we give up. And there's never a reason to give up. Unless you're going the wrong direction. And then we just pivot and turn. Next week, we have on Dr. Paul Napper to talk about the power of agency, the 7 principles to conquer obstacles, make effective decisions, and create a life on your own terms. It's about taking control of your life. I know you'll love it. What's preventing you from moving forward, and who are you putting on your team to build the life you deserve? Taking no action creates a far worse outcome in life than trying something and failing. I can help you achieve your goals through coaching and accountability. There's a scheduling link in the show notes. Just click on it, get on my schedule, and see if I can help you. For many people, one session allows them to take a giant leap forward towards their dreams. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.